Ever wondered how to transform your mixed media projects to the next level? Let's dive into the world of Powertex Universal Medium. Hi everyone, I'm Cheryl Baglioli, owner of Powertex Products USA, located in the beautiful state of Maine. We are the exclusive US distributor for Powertex products. And today, we're going to explore Powertex Universal Medium, the ultimate tool for artists and crafters. So, what is universal medium? Well, PowerTex Universal Medium is a revolutionary textile hardener. It's a liquid medium that serves as the backbone for countless mixed media projects. So, what are some key features of PowerTex Universal Medium? Versatility, for one. I love that this can be used on so many different surfaces. It works on most anything that has some porosity to it. It doesn't like plastic. It does seem to resist from plastic because this is a polymer base, but you can use it on fabric, wood, cardboard, paper, terracotta, stone, canvases, clay, just so many different applications. That's why I fell in love with it because I am definitely a mixed media girl and I like to dabble in all kinds of arts. It's also weather resistant, which means that once you've completed your project, it can hang out outside. You can make some really cool yard art out of this. And the PowerTex Transparent, if you love working with fabric, the transparent is so wonderful because it dries completely clear, preserving your original patterns and colors in your fabric. PowerTex Universal Medium also comes in three convenient sizes just for you. Our smallest size is half a liter or 500 grams. This is perfect for you just if you want to try a different color or just to get started and see what this wonderful universal medium can really do. So again, this one is 500 grams or half a liter. The next size up is our most popular size. This one is 1,000 grams or 1 liter for those of us in the United States. And this will cover many different projects depending on what size that you're working on. That is a question that we get quite often. How many projects can I get out of one bottle of PowerTex? That is such a subjective question because it totally depends upon how much porosity that your substrate has, how large of a project you're using, how heavy-handed you are. So it's really hard to say, but I can tell you that one of the most popular things to do is figurines, and I can get multiple figurines out of one bottle. So this again is our 1,000 grams or 1 liter. And then our largest size is our 5,000 grams or 5 liters for those of us in the United States. Now, this one is mostly for teachers if you're teaching with this, or if you're working on really large projects, or maybe you're working on a series, or it's your favorite color that you use all the time. You're going to want to level up and get the big boy, which is the 5,000 grams, 5 liters. Now, not only does it come in three sizes, but it also comes in 10 different standard colors. So transparent, and then we have white and ivory. Now, I will say that while these look like they're all the same kind of color together, they are different colors. So the transparent, while it does look white in the bottle in liquid form, it will dry completely clear. And then we have our white and our ivory. We also have our primary colors. So we have red, we have yellow ochre, and we have blue. These colors can be mixed to create most any kind of color you want, just like you use paints at home. So those are our three. You can also add and change the tonal value by starting to add other colors in them. So if you added more transparent to it, you'll change the transparency. If you add more white, you're going to make them more pastel. Ivory is going to make it very, very muted color. So again, you can mix these. If you want to darken them up, let's add some darker shades. So some of our darker shades that we have bronze. This is probably one of my favorites. The bronze looks like chocolate milk in its liquid form, but once you create your project and then you cover it over with some pigments and dry brush it and bring it to life, it'll actually look like a bronze sculpture by adding bronze gold pigment to it afterwards. And then we have a terracotta, which is just a lovely terracotta color. Now, not all of these colors will come in all three sizes. Most do. The terracotta only comes in the 1,000 grams. So then we also have a gray. It's called a lead gray. And then we have a black, and this black is just a really, really nice, rich black. Now, currently in our warehouse here, we do have one other limited color, and this is our green. But as of this recording, this one is being discontinued. So once we sell out of the green, we will no longer be carrying the green. But that's okay, because you can take and mix the blue and the yellow to create your own custom green color. So why is it called Universal Medium? Well, it's called Universal Medium because of its wide range of applications. It can be used on everything from fiber art and sculpting to mixed media projects. So let me show you some different examples. Here's one that we used the universal medium with t-shirt material. And we created this sculpture just with fabric. Now, it was put on a wire armature, and that's, the skeletal base that we built this on, if you don't know what an armature is. And we put it on a base. But this fabric is just strips of t-shirt that we dipped into the universal medium and then layered. We added some colors afterwards, a little bit more detail in it, but just to give you an idea of just how hard and stiff. So this universal medium is not a fabric stiffener. This is a permanent textile hardener. So once it dries, it'll be hard. So here's one using fabric sculpture. You can also use it just directly on paper mache type of projects. So this was just a paper mache form and then some t-shirt material just to make a little home decor for my sewing room. You can use it to create jewelry, brooches, little pendants. This was just a little tiny strip of fabric, and we just put a little clasp in it, and you could put a pin back on it and wear it. There's just so many different little projects that you can make with it. We can create home decor items. So with holidays, you can create some little home decor, little ornaments using clay. Speaking about clay, so we also have different powders that can be mixed with it. Now that will be explained in a later video, but the powders mixed with the universal medium created air dry clay. No kiln needed at all. You can use an air dry clay, and once it's completely dried and cured, again, it's going to be weatherproof and weather resistant. So you can create beautiful clay sculptures that are gallery ready. In addition to that, you can create all kinds of little friends. Using clay, there's just so many different applications that you can use it with. So again, you can use it with beautiful fine arts. You can paint with it on a canvas and create fine art projects. You can create sculptures with it, home decor, crafts, and so much more. So how do you use Powertex Universal Medium? Well, I'm not going to give you a full tutorial right now for a project, but I will give you some basic tips and tricks to get started. First of all, you're going to protect your work surface and your clothes. This is a permanent textile hardener, which means if you get it on your clothes, it is going to dry them and it is going to harden them and it's going to be permanently on there. So make sure that you're either wearing clothes that you don't care about or put an apron on. Now, this is non-toxic. It even has the AP seal of approval, which means that it's safe to use with children. So that's one thing that I love about our universal medium and many of our other projects. They're all non-toxic, safe to use. I do wear gloves when I'm working with this and sculpting with it, not because I'm so much worried about the properties on my hands, but because of its drying properties. I don't want to dry my hands out a whole lot. So I do wear gloves. Plus, I don't want to get stuck to everything and have to wash my hands every time that it starts to dry, where I can just take the gloves off and dispose of them and put a new pair and keep on working. So, how do you get started? Again, put on protective clothing or put on an apron. The next thing you want to do is you want to protect your work surface. So, a lot of times you can just cover it with plastic because, as I mentioned before, this doesn't like to stick to plastic. So, plastic is a very easy thing that you can clean. You don't want to put paper down because it will harden your paper and things will get stuck to it. So, use something that it's not going to stick to. Here on my desk, a lot of times I'm just using this glass mat, and underneath that, I have a non-stick craft mat, and that works really well for me. Okay, so once you've got your surface ready and you're ready to go and your protective clothing on, next thing we need to do is we need to prepare the universal medium. So the first thing you need to do is give it a shake, a stir, and then another shake. And the reason why is because you need to break up the pigments. Sitting on the shelf, they're going to settle. So every time you use the universal medium, you need to follow these steps. So I like to give it a good shake before, and that just kind of breaks it up and gets it moving around. But there's still going to be a heavy bit of pigment that's settled down to the bottom and your hardening materials. So you're going to open your bottle, and then what I recommend is just go get little dowels that you can get from the hardware store, big box stores, things like that, just plain little wooden dowels. And you can see these I've used quite frequently, and I use them again and again and again and again until they're really have a lot of product over it, and then I find some way to implement that in an art project half the time. So what you're going to do is you're just going to take your little stick. If you've got a long spatula, that'll work too, like a silicone spatula that's really skinny. But you want to get down in there and you want to break up those pigments and those hardening materials. And you want to give it a good little stir and break that up. Now, and then we're going to just kind of scrape some of this off of our dowel, set this on the side. Now, when you put this down, again, remember that this it has a permanent textile hardener. So if I set that down on wood or paper, it's going to stick to it if you don't get it off. So I like to keep something like a non-stick craft mat right here next to me that I can put my tools on, and I know that they're not going to get stuck to something and then I have to peel it off. So once you've given it a good little stir, then we're going to put the lid back on. Don't forget that. Put the lid back on. Make sure that it's tight. And then give it a good shake again. Now, I will tell you, and we're going to shake this really, really well. So, different colors have different hardening characteristics to it. So, the transparent, for example, that's going to be more fluid. It's not going to have lumps in it really or anything else like that. Um, but some of the other colors, especially those that are more of your earth tones and your darker colors, are going to have like more little bits of lumps inside of it. That's okay. As a matter of fact, I chose the yellow ochre to demo today because this is the one I get the questions about the most. A lot of times there'll be little lumps of materials that are in here when you pour it out. That doesn't mean that it's bad or anything. It's just the characteristics of it. It's totally normal, but you can still work it out, and I'm going to show you how. So we've given it a really good shake, and we're going to now unscrew it, and now we can pour it into our container. So you're going to see here that there might be some little, you can see there's a couple little lumps that keep coming out with it, and that's all right. So you see those little lumps? What I like to use is just like a silicone spatula, or you can use your palette knife. Palette knife would be just fine here. Plastic spoon, whatever you have that's available. And you can just come in here and just break up those little lumps, give them a little squish and break them up. If it is still too thick, for example, if I wanted to paint on a canvas with this and I still felt like it was a little bit too thick, sometimes it could be because of the temperature. If it's really cold in your studio, this will seem to have a way to thicken up a little bit. If it's really hot, it'll be a little bit more fluid also. So all I'm going to do is just keep smushing this up and break down those clumps. But I could add a little bit of water. This is a water-based polymer, so it cleans up with soap and water. I love that about it. So you can see that it's very easy here just to break up those little lumps, and now I have a good fluid amount. So how do I use this? So now, once I have this ready and it's in my container, I can use this with a paintbrush, I can use it with a sponge, I can use it with a palette knife. Now, before we go into the process of it, I just want to remind you that you also want to close your container so that it doesn't evaporate, but make sure that you wipe off the bottle because this will harden, and wipe off your lid before you put your lid back on, and then close it, tighten it down, and move it out of the way, and that way it doesn't dry out, you won't knock it over, and it won't spill. So there's different ways that you can apply Powertex. So we've got our surface ready, we have it poured in here, we've broken up our little lumps if it had any, and now what are we going to do? So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to put on some gloves, and that again is just to protect my nails and protect my skin from drying out, not because I'm worried about the materials. So we're just going to put some little gloves on, and there we go. Now, you can do a couple of this, it's so versatile. I could use just a regular paintbrush and paint this on my canvas. I could use the little silicone paintbrush here that I have, this little wedge, and apply this on the surface if I want, and just paint it directly onto the canvas. I could also just use a palette knife. I love to use a palette knife quite frequently and just kind of get some. And I love it because of the texture. You can see as it dries, we would be able to create even more texture on our canvas. So And you can make this thick, or you can make it really thin and just create just a layer of background color just to tint the back of your canvas as well. Now, in addition to that, you want to make sure that you clean your tools. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that at the end. But I like to, at this point, just clean them with a paper towel. And, or you could dip them if you have a container of water nearby. But you don't want to put them in the sink. Again, we'll talk about this at the end. Now, if you're using fabric, so here I've got just a little bit of what we call staccanetta. So this is very stretchable and it stretches in different directions. But again, you can use any kind of fabric, t-shirt material, cotton, muslin, cheesecloth, anything like that. Now, the trick that I like to do when I'm dipping it is I'm only going to dip in part of it. And you don't want to have it just dripping all over the place. So that's why I don't like to dip the whole thing. So I dip half of it, and then I allow the excess to work into the rest of the fabric. And you want to make sure that your fabric is very well saturated all the way through, because this is a textile hardener. You don't want to just cover the surface. You actually want to harden all of the fabric. So you don't want any more of these little white spaces in here. And then once you have what you need, you can take this and drape it on your figurine, or you can even work it into your mixed media project. So I could be able to put it on my canvas and work it in, and then I could cut off the excess. So I do keep scissors around that I use just for using with Universal Media. I'm not worrying about if I get stuff on them. I do try to use a non-stick pair of scissors. That way they clean up fairly easy. And then I can use this little bit too. We don't want anything to go to waste, right? So, and just blend it right back in. Now, the Universal Medium not only colors, but it is an adhesive because it is a polymer base. So this is going to stick really, really well to this canvas. And I don't have to worry about it. But I don't want this to go to waste either. So let's take this part here and find a little home for that as well. And just kind of, now maybe I want to put a little bit more holes in here. I can add that and just put it on. Now, if I do still have a few spots that aren't completely coated, that's where I can come in with one of my paint brushes and make sure that I get that covered all the way. So again, you can use a paintbrush, you can use a palette knife, you can use your hands and apply this however you want. So because this is a paintbrush, I don't want this to harden. That I'm going to put into my little container of water right here on the side and make sure that I get that all washed out. And then I will let this dry before I come back and start adding even more layers to it. So let's pretend that we're done with our project, enough for today, but we still have all of this left over in our container. And I don't want this to go to waste because the fact that I have not used any other products in this other than the Universal Medium. So I didn't add any clay, I didn't add any other colors, I didn't add any other paints to it. I can put whatever's still left over right back into my bottle. So we're just going to open this again, and I can pour it right back into my container so that I am not wasting product. You do not want to pour this down the drain because it is a textile hardener. It will harden and it'll clog your pipes, and none of us want that, right? So when I'm done for the day, if you know you're going to come back to it in a little bit, I could have just put a lid on this. This is why I like containers like takeaway containers or leftover yogurt containers, because you could just put the lid back on it and come back to it later that night. You come back to it the next day and it's still going to be totally fine. But if I'm not sure when I'm going to come back to this project or I'm done with this project, I am just going to put it right back into the container and then allow this to dry in the container overnight, because we've used a plastic container and I have one underneath here. So let me just kind of pull this out and show you that this one here has completely dried. So this is one that I used previously and I had scraped out the residue, put it back in my bottle, and now it's dry. So the fun thing about this is that now I can just go in there and it's just going to peel away. So you can see that because it doesn't like to stick to plastic, I can just peel this away. And if you need to get a little palette knife and get in here, there we go. It'll just lift right out. So now I'm getting this really great skin that I could use this and put it back in my work, or because this is totally dry, it's now inert and I can just throw it in the garbage. Super, super easy to clean up, and then I can use this container again. Once I just get out all these little dried pieces, which will peel out very, very easily, I can then use this container again for the next time. So cleanup is a snap. Now, back to your canvas, make sure that you enjoy incorporating materials like fabric strips, natural fibers, yarn, any kind of found objects, or you could create clay and create texture and dimension on your canvases as well. Now, when I'm ready to clean up is a snap. If you've used plastic, just wad it all up, throw it in the garbage. Because I'm using a glass mat, all I need to do is just spray it with a little bit of water and give it a good wipe. If there's some places that have already dried, because I'm using glass, I can use a scraper and just kind of scrape off any dried bits while it's wet on glass. Because it's got water on it, I'm not worried about scratching this. And just scrape up any little bits and then wipe it down, and I am ready to go for my next project. So once you've added your universal medium to your project, and then you can add more depth and dimension by coming back and adding more layers and dry brushing. So you can see, for example, in this item here, once this was just a little bit of fabric that we draped around these little faces, then we came back with our bronze gold and just hit all these little highlights with a dry brush. Added a little bit of color in the back just to add some more dimension to this. This little ornament was made with clay that we used with our powders and the universal medium. And after it was dry, we were able to spray some colors on and then come back and just dry brush. And you can see all these lovely little layers of color that we have peeking through. Here's our little meerkat. And this one here has all kinds of, we used the dark gray, we used the yellow ochre, burnt sienna, pigments. We just mixed pigments with some varnish and dry brushed to give this life and give it some more depth and texture and really have it just come to life. I love this little fellow. Boop. All right, so we talked about the cleanup. Make sure that you just wash your tools really well. Because this is a water base again, cleans up easily with soap and water. Do not throw it down the drain. Allow it to dry and then peel it out and then just dispose of it in the garbage and it's all good to go. The other thing you want to do is make sure that you store this at room temperature. You do not want it to freeze. If the universal medium freezes, it will ruin the product. So please don't allow it to stay somewhere outside. If you're in the northern climate, for example, we're in Maine, I do not store this outside. Our warehouse here does have heat and protection to make sure that it doesn't freeze and totally toast it. So it will be touch dry in about 30 minutes under normal circumstances, and it takes about 2 to 4 weeks for it to fully cure. So I always recommend everybody to please give it that time to fully cure. Even though it feels dry, you'll notice that after a few days it starts getting harder and harder and harder. So let it cure before you put it outside, most definitely, or before you put it in a gallery to showcase your artwork. So just recap. Universal Medium will be your go-to universal medium to level up your mixed media projects and transform them into something completely magical. I hope that you'll give it a try. Just remember, store that at room temperature. Don't allow it to freeze. Always remember to shake and stir your bottle of product so that you break up all those pigments in the bottom. Explore, have fun, experiment with it. We're here to answer any questions that you have. Don't forget also to allow it time to dry and fully cure before you put it on display. In addition to that, one more note to make. We talked about the fact that the transparent does dry transparent and allows those beautiful patterns and colors to show through. It will darken some fabrics just because you are getting it wet. So just like any other fabric, when you get it wet, how it darkens. So please do a test swab first because it may darken your pattern. If you're going to place the transparent outside that you've used with a fabric that has beautiful patterns and colors in it, I recommend that you give it the 2 to 4 weeks to fully cure and then cover it with a UV protector. Because if you put it outside, the sun will bleach through the transparent and will fade your fabric. So use a UV sealer. You can usually find a concrete UV sealer in your hardware or paint store. I hope that this has inspired you to give Universal Medium a try. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more creative tips. And let me know in the comments down below what projects that you would like to try with Powertex Universal Medium. We'd love to see your projects. Thank you and have fun creating.